Yeah, well, I'd say at this time, precisely this time, 40 years ago, the seeds of EIGSE were being sown, being planted. And in due course, the plant flowered very well and is still flowering. Now, three people were really instrumental at that time in getting EIGSE, the idea, developing an idea. One was Brendan Conway, who was CEO of County Kilkenny VEC. Another was Donald Foley, then sub-editor of the Irish Times, and Richard Brannock, Dick Walsh from Slieverue, who was then in the linguistics department of UCD. It happened, Brendan Conway had a mission, I think, to establish something cultural stroke artistic in each of the 7 schools under Kilkenny VEC. Donald Foley had a mission to promote knowledge of John O'Donovan, and Richard Brannock was totally supportive of anything relating to Slieverue. Remarkable. He used to come down here and come into the school to us. I was down the school down both in the village, and loved to talk about anything. Now, I was supposed to be teaching at the time, but Dick would come in, and I'm sure the pupils loved it. I would be totally absorbed by Dick and his... Anyway, they met at the youth meet at the Merryman summer school, and obviously over a few drinks that night, this whole thing developed, where Foley in particular was pushing the idea of something like Merryman in Slieverue, and eventually this is what happened. So then in November 78, the first EIGSE event took place. So that's more or less the background to it, Holly.
And who was on that committee then, the first committee?
Oh, the first chairman was John O'Callaghan. He was at the time teaching down the vocational school. John is still very much with us. Intended to be here this evening, but family commitments dictated that he couldn't. John was the first chairman, and he was chairman for a long, long time and did an excellent job. And I'd say the growth of EIGSE was to quite an extent due to John's enthusiasm and work. The first secretary was...
it was Olga, the first secretary. Pat Welsh was the PRO.
Olga Irish.
Yeah, and
the treasurer
was Josephine Dwyer.
Josephine Dwyer.
And I was vice chairperson.
Now Josephine
Grennan.
Yeah. And then Pat Welsh, the late Pat Welsh, was the PRO.
Yeah.
Then there was a few others. Katherine, you were on the committee, weren't you?
I was on the committee. I was a vice chairperson at the time. Yeah. And
must have been a couple of others.
there was eventually then there was Bernadette Fitzgerald then came into it the following year.
Later.
But only about 3 years later, really.
Yeah.
And then you had...
And Katherine, how did you get roped in?
Well, I suppose I was teaching in the school, Ollie, and I was always interested in history, and particularly local history. So I suppose it was kind of a natural thing to do at the time. I was teaching in the primary school in Slieverue at that time. I was there about 8 years. So, I was just totally interested in it, and that's really how I...
You just waiting to be asked.
Well, I wasn't really, but I mean, I thought the idea was very good.
She was roped in.
I was roped in, exactly. I was roped in, and I've been roped in for the last 40 years now, so...
You can't get out.
Well roped in.
Well roped in at this stage,
I wanted to ask you, because, you're Dick's
nephew.
Yeah. So... And it's a very interesting story. Could you tell us a little bit about your uncle?
Sure. Uncle Dick was born here in Slieverue, just down the road. He went to primary school here, just up the road, and continued from there to go to Mount Sion in Waterford, where he came first in, I think, English in the Leaving Cert. And luckily enough, a brother there recognised his talent and coached him in Latin sort of privately, which gave him the opportunity to matriculate and therefore to get a scholarship to go to UCD.
At that time, everything would have been true Irish.
Everything true Irish, and Uncle Dick had a fantastic love of Irish. And in fact, you cycle out to Ring in County Waterford just to perfect his Irish. And in fact, you know, when in UCD, he used his contacts back in Ring to begin a lifelong love of Dacia Irish or Munster Irish, and has wrote some important scholarly works on the Irish of Ring. In fact, he gained his PhD from one of them. It was called, I think, The Irish of Ring. And then he wrote another book on Canon Sheehan, Archbishop Sheehan, who was a Waterford man, who became coadjutor Bishop of Sydney in Australia, but who had a great love of Irish. And Dick wrote a book called Shanachite na Naisha, Cuidado, which was a sort of an exploration or an elaboration of Archbishop Sheehan's work on the Irish language. So Dick had a great love of Irish, was one of the first scholars in the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies, which had been set up by Aim de Valera. In fact, de Valera was attended his wedding, which is another story altogether. But Dick was a scholar with the Celtic Studies School within the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies, and in that he kind of got this great love of a sense of place. You know, what it meant to be Irish, but more importantly, what it meant to be Irish in a particular location. And in a sense, that's what EIGSE became. You know, this idea that we are all connected and we're all part of our own native place. And I suppose if I were to say about Dick, I'd say this, that though he lived all his life in Dublin nearly, he was never of Dublin. He was of Slieverue, and as Jim said, he loved coming back here.
Yeah. And like for him to get to university must have been a big deal for your family and a challenge for your family as well.
Indeed, I think it was. And I mean, I can't be certain about this, but Dick's mother was a Brazil from Waterford, which was a pretty well-known family in Waterford at the time. And she by all accounts was a woman of great kind of perception and of great love of learning, and I'd say encouraged him to ensure that he did the best that he could. And certainly it was a challenge and it was a sacrifice. And there are stories told about the heifer or the bullock being sold early in order to meet the fees in UCD. So yes, it was a great sacrifice. But it
was probably normal for people to maybe get a son into the priesthood or something like that. But to get off to university and like in the very academic world, I mean, it's very unusual, I'd say.
Yes, and in fact, it's funny because Uncle Dick used to often say that about Mount Sion. I mean, Mount Sion at the time, you know, trained people for sort of decent jobs, like, you know, a job in the civil service or a job somewhat like that, but wasn't really expecting their boys to go on to university. So for Dick to do that at that time was a big sacrifice and a big leap.
And you said too that he also had a big interest in Newfoundland.
He did indeed. He went over to Newfoundland, and again that sprung almost from the idea of, you know, what it means to be Irish and what it means, this idea of the sense of place. He was a visiting professor in the University of St. John's in Newfoundland, and as people now know, the Irish sort of migration to Newfoundland left pockets of Waterford people, Kilkenny people in Newfoundland still speaking with the same sort of idiom that they had when they were back here in Ireland. So Dick established a significant number of connections with Newfoundland, academic and otherwise, in the University of St. John's, and through those began a process of reminding us back here in Ireland, you know, of those links. And we had that famous conference, the Confluence in 1985, which kind of kicked off the Waterford, South Kilkenny, Newfoundland connection, which has grown from strength to strength, and which is now, I think, publicly funded by the Canadian government.
Yeah.
And Katherine, I know you've been to Newfoundland, haven't you?
I have.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about all that kind of?
Well, just to get back to Dick for the moment, the confluence was called the confluence because it was really taken from the three rivers, the Barra, the Nore and the Shore, and the people that lived within that sort of piece of land, they were the people who actually were able to walk into Waterford, and they were the ones who got the boats to Newfoundland. Like, I've been to Newfoundland, and I have to say it is just an amazing place. It is so different than any other holidays I've ever been on, and it's the people. There's very little to see there. It's very rocky. It's very it's so rocky actually that the ESB poles, as we call them, are actually down in square boxes with rocks to keep the poles steady. Like, it is so vastly covered in rocks. But they love to meet Irish people there. They just love the Irish going over no matter what. And they quite a number of them come over here. You see, it's easier to get to Newfoundland now because WestJet have started a direct flight from Dublin, and that really has set the ball rolling, because quite a number of them now come over to Waterford, and different groups of them. But the Ireland Newfoundland Connections, they have a company, and they kind of organise every second year for people to go out there. But they have the shed dances, and the Irish music in Newfoundland is good, if not better, than here. And it's the same type of tunes. And I mean, the last time we were out, we visited with a fishing like Dunmore EIGSE, and as sure as anything, Liam Clancy was playing on the old radio. On the bench, and they're gutting the cod. You know, it's that Irish, and they don't play anything else.
And just to go back to EIGSE, and I know Dick organised. You said, I think,
the confluence in 1985,
yes,
when you brought over people from Newfoundland.
But I mean, you've had some amazing speakers, Jim, over the years.
Yeah, initially our big focus was on getting big names, and we felt that by having big names, we would entice people to attend. And we indeed had many important people opening it. They're outlined in the little booklet I gave you. And we had an opener and a speaker for the first lecture each year. On one occasion, the most notable one, it must be said, we had was at a time on Taoiseach, Jack Lynch. He opened EIGSE in '84, and late Paddy Buggy, they're both gone now, gave the lecture that year on the GAA. But we've had Brian Fadden, etc. We very quickly found out that people were more interested. We also included some talks on local interest, and that was what really appealed to people. The big names and the national stuff, yeah, okay, but every time give us preferably local stuff about families who once lived here, or landlords, and the history relating to the landlords and the castles and the big houses and so on. And of course then notable personalities. O'Donovan, we hung the first couple of EIGSEs anyway on John O'Donovan, and had prominent speakers including Dick. Dick spoke, I think, the second year, if not the first.
First year, I think, yeah. On John O'Donovan.
On O'Donovan. And Richard Lawler Shield, another parishioner who made it big as an MP and so on. He got good treatment, and many others. So, but local history is really what appeals to the people.
And Katherine, would you echo that? I mean, what's your memory of the different EIGSEs over the 40 years?
Well, I must say, like Jim said, myself, I just love the local history, and I do think most people liked the local ones. When we had, say, talks that were maybe a little bit more academic, you know, people didn't like it as much. So, and we were very lucky as well, Ollie, to have a lot of local speakers. Like, we had Julian Walton, we had, I suppose, two of our regulars were Dan Dowling from Glenmore and Jack Burchell. And Jack is still a member of our committee, and Jack, over the years, Jim, you'd agree, has given us all sorts of talks, you know. And then we had other speakers, like openers like Brenda Power, we had Amy McEnany, we had Sue Nunn, you know, as well as then we had Anna Manahan, we had as Jim said, Paddy Buggy, lots of interesting personalities, but the local stuff. Then we had panels on a number of years. We'll say we had 3 local people. We had Kitty Irish and Michael Griffin and Jim, I think, were on a panel, and they spoke of different aspects of Slieverue, and those went down really, really well. You know, which is like, it's something that we remember more than other talks.
Doesn't it actually show you how rich local life is? The fact that you can sustain, you know, an EIGSE over 40 years.
Yeah.
Mainly in the latter years, relying on local talent and local people.
That's true.
You know what I mean? It actually distinguishes EIGSE from say, some of the bigger summer schools.
True, Michael, that they depend on maybe...
And
they haven't run out of things. Well, Irish people don't run out of things to talk about.
No, they don't really. And the fact that we're here for 40 years, Ollie, says something, you know. And as well as that, other historical societies have kind of started off like as well. Like EIGSE was there like since 1978. But again, like Jim said, I say before it started, nobody ever heard of John O'Donovan. You know, it sort of it awoke people to personalities in our own area that were very famous and did a lot of good work, you know. And then as well as that, for EIGSE, we spent some of our money as well, Ollie, on refurbishing the O'Donovan Monument in Glasnevin. Now we've done this only last year. We spent quite a bit of money to clean it up again. But going back about 1982 or 3, Jim, wasn't that it?
25 years ago.
Yeah, about 25 years ago. A bus load went from Slieverue and we had it all refurbished and done up lovely. And it's well worth a visit. Today, if anybody is visiting Glasnevin, you know, it's lovely to go
and
there.
What are kind of like, I mean, I know you obviously had the speakers and all that kind of stuff, but what are kind of the atmosphere of the weekends? What were they like?
With music, Ollie. Music was big.
And I know you went down to the place, the pub by Post.
We did. Well, the very first EIGSE, would you believe, we had a very talented family called the Cassidy. Now, one of their daughters or granddaughters, I'm not sure, was involved with that lovely concert last year, you know, the 1916 concert that came from Dublin. But they were so talented. And like we were talking about an old parish hall that was kind of damp and dreary and it had nothing really going for it. But, I mean, that it was packed that night. The very second year, this is amazing, we had Stockton's Wing. Now, they were young Stockton's Wing then, and they were supported by Mick Forrestal and Paul Grant. But, like, you know, that was kind of names we had. Now, then we had Sean O'Shea, we had various personalities. But then we also had Coltis Kjoltori were very popular. And we used to have the young junior Coltis playing at the opening night in EIGSE. Now, that went on for a few years. Eventually then we kind of got to maybe using more local talent and having concerts. And for a number of years we had a lovely pageants, and now they were actually held in the church in Slieverue. You know, there was one year the theme was John O'Donovan, and the songs that related to the time and the poems, that they were very popular. But we've done a number of various things, but the atmosphere is always lovely. The village is decorated, you know, it was originally one weekend, Friday, maybe Saturday, Sunday morning, and sometimes a Sunday night. But now we've expanded it to a week, which is kind of a Friday, maybe
10 days.
10 days, really. Yeah, it's gone a bit over a week now, you know. But there's always a nice atmosphere.
I think one of the things that maybe you can take credit for, Katherine, certainly you were involved in, is involving young people.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
it's not just for adults.
Yeah, I was lucky. I was in the school,
people.
You see, you know.
So can you imagine? It gives those young people a sense of of history and a sense of belongingness.
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, Breed Lynch, that you've spoken to earlier today, like I can remember Breed in class doing a project on the church way back when she was in maybe 5th class, you know. And again, we also had bus tours. We brought the children, and we still do every year. We bring them someplace like, say, Johnstown Castle or Ormond Castle in Garryconsure, just within a 30-mile radius, say. And again, the bus is always packed every year. Now, again, like that, children don't tend to like local history when it's part of school. Do you know, like they don't really, they want some games or something, but they'll come on a Saturday on a bus and quite enjoy it, you know. So we've kind of included a lot of different aspects in EIGSE. And
I mean, Breda was a good example of someone who kind of came to the whole thing later, in the sense of like later on now it's her
life, like really history.
Profession,
It's really interesting how I suppose now history is something that you can always go dip into and find out more things which years ago you couldn't, I suppose.
That's right. Yeah.
But I mean, EIGSE, What about yourself, man? What was your What was your memories of it over the years?
Well, one of my one of my enduring memories is in the kitchen in our own house.
That would have been
After all the formal activities have finished, and you'd have Dick and maybe
Kieran McMahon,
Brendan Conway,
yeah.
Cyril Byrne maybe from Dublin at times,
right, yeah.
a few others, gathering around the kitchen table and singing their hearts out, and indeed, long into the night after many bottles had been consumed, but having a really great time. That. To me, that sort of encapsulated, or going down to the ferry in Ballinrobe.
That's right, and yes, you
were
in the ferry alley, that was a great.
Again, it was a kind of a place that we went to, and had the more informal aspects of the EIGSE.
And we also had a kind of refreshments after our opening, only on the opening night, where the local ICA now, which was absolutely gorgeous, sandwiches and yourself, Michael, and cakes and that, where people stood around and kind of dissected the lecture and chatted about it and kind of talked about other, usually historical things, and that was a big aspect of it. People liked that as well. We even had wine, I think, Jim, at one stage, didn't we? We had a wine wine reception. We were very posh all together. Yes, we did.
and I suppose, would you see EIGSE here in another 40 years?
In another 40 years?
In 40 years' time, would you see it?
Well, I won't be around, but hopefully, yes. Somebody told us along the way that groups such as ours live for about 15 or 18 years and fade out. And so we have survived much more than that.
Jim,
And really, we'd hope that it would continue, Wally. Yeah. See, there's no end to local history. And it's amazing how much history there is. Every place.
Yeah.
Every townland and when you dissect it and examine it and get people focused on looking at aspects of it. So there's a lot to do still.
And Jim, on that, over the years, would you found out things that you never realised 40 years ago through the local history? And
Oh, absolutely.
Like what kind of things stick in your head?
Oh dear.
Even the big houses, Jim, we didn't know much about the big houses.
Well, we didn't.
But you did a one on Bellevue House, and they were around us, Ollie, but we never really knew anything about them.
That aspect of it, yes.
Obviously.
They were sort of excluded from our consciousness, really.
They were, really. They were.
They were there, but we weren't aware of them, or didn't focus on them. And of course, they're gone now, nearly all of them. And in many cases, more the pity. And the people who own them are, in most cases, gone. So, but that's life.
And it's a very interesting period now with the civil war politics kind of gone now, in the sense of things can be talked about, which probably years ago couldn't be talked about. So it is kind of interesting how Ireland is changing as well.
Yes.
What about you, Katherine? What was your I suppose, where would you see the EIGSE going over the next number of years, or would you?
Well, I'd hope it would continue as it is, Ollie. Now, can be difficult enough to get speakers every year, but we always come up with somebody, and there's always somebody out there that we can kind of twist an arm or tap into and get them to give us a talk. And you'd hope maybe that some of the younger people might come on board, Again, as I said, it's not the easiest thing to keep going, but it is possible. And like that every year, like saying this year, 2017, we probably focus on 1917 and maybe the form being the cunning beg. We try and kind of maybe have one or two of lectures relevant to that. Like say if there's an anniversary year, we kind of go back, and that helps to kind of have, at least gives us a start, And I suppose we have about 12 on the committee. And usually among the 12, Jim, there's always somebody, isn't there, that will come up with ideas, Ollie, and that. We're lucky, we have a fairly vibrant committee.
So it's quite a big committee.
It's quite a big committee, it is, it is. And they have various, they do various jobs.
How often would you meet over here?
Well, that's the good thing about it, I suppose. We don't meet about 4 times, Ollie, is all. It's not something that we feel, bogged down by.
There's no monthly commitment.
No.
Okay. So when you do meet, you have a lot to talk about.
Yes, and it's usually in the months coming.
September, October
the 2
is
months
very busy.
coming.
yeah, that's the
up
busy time, like
to
you know.
November.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And yourself, Michael, what's your what would you think of the future of something like this?
Well, first of all, I think I see great hope on the base because you're involving young people so early in the process. I think you will find that it will continue, and also access to sources now to stories is much easier now than it was. I mean, things are opening up that were close to us before. For example, even looking at things like the census that's online,
That's right.
the military archive, the stuff that's online from there. It gives people another avenue in which to explore, maybe to even, as you say, maybe come up with a new theme for in 2 or 3 years' time for what
And we also find, Ali,
discuss the
that
action.
some people in the academic field, in the universities, they're getting established, and to come here, give a lecture, and have their name advertised is a benefit, you know, getting them
To them.
established. And quite a few now have appreciated the opportunity, and we pay a fee, but very often those people won't take a fee. They feel that they've been repaid sufficiently, or been paid sufficiently.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. And what about the actual village of Slieverue? Because I mean, if you take it, I mean, here we're looking at it from the outside, right? You know, people saying there used to be a post office. You know, there used to be more shops.
There's a lot of history in the village, Ali.
But
just in the
there's
village.
But there's also a kind of sense of it at a crossroads, in a way, in the sense of the village itself is closing down a bit. You know what I mean? That it needs to reinvent itself somewhat because. Do you know what I mean? Because you know things have changed.
Well, I mean, I've been out of Slieverue for over 40 years now myself. I mean, actually, it's actually over 40 years since I left. It's about 45 years since I left Slieverue, and you know, I mean, I don't see a huge amount of difference in the village. Except Margaret Power's pub. That's probably the biggest cultural shock.
Absolutely,
the place has had. But generally, I mean, you know, the village itself is still, I think it's still a vibrant village.
While you have a shop, I think, Michael, the shop is still kind of the central point, you know, the church, I suppose.
But even, you know, okay, the vocational school closed down, but you have, but in its place, you have that fabulous
Jonas
resource.
School,
The village hall, you know, was always there. It is now an improved village hall.
Yeah.
There are more people living in the village. And in its surrounds. I never lived. I would.
Yeah,
and I think people want, you know, I mean, transport links are such now, communication is so much better now. You don't have to live sort of in a city or whatever to enjoy all of the benefits of life, you know. So I wouldn't see a problem.
Yeah, no, I'd say Slieverue it will be okay. Again, when it's like from the time it was bypassed, it's a lovely peaceful village now. It really is, you know. Now, I mean, I suppose it'd be great if you had a little coffee shop or some little additions to it. But I think, like Michael said, you have the playgroup, you have the Jonah, you have the John O'Donovan Centre, which is used quite a lot. You have the hall, parish hall, you have the church, you have the 2 pubs, you know, in a very, very close proximity to one another.
Yeah.
And then you have the primary school, which is only down the road. So, like, you know, it is quite a compact little village. So I do think it will be okay.
And Jim, I'm going to come back to you and Katherine as well on this one. Why did you decide to do this film?
Sorry?
Why did you decide to do this film? Why did you decide to make this film?
Oh, well, 10 years ago, we produced that little booklet. So we felt we'd have to do something this year. Maybe not another booklet, but something else. And the idea of the video grew from that.
It did, and I had seen one or two of the ones that you had already done, and to me it sounded really lovely, you know, that you'd be talking with people and you'd have people reminiscing and that. And
we also felt from the beginning that we'd have enough material, and I think that has been seen to be the case.
And I think it's, again, what you were talking about, the whole thing that it's not necessarily about the history, but it's also about the social history. People's
Absolutely.
memories.
Oh, yeah.
Stories,
Absolutely.
anecdotes.
That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
we'll be getting, like, by the interviewing, I think, and that will be great.
Mm-hmm.
It will be a great resource in future, for the future.
Okay, well, thanks very much, lads.
Thank you very much.
Grant?
Thank you.